I want to begin by saying it's obvious to everyone that we are shocked, stunned, and heartbroken by the terrible tragedy that took place this week in Sydney. And may Hashem send a full shlema for all those that are injured, speedy recovery, and comfort, and mend the broken hearts of those that are bereaved. And to sum it up in the words that I was just listening to a recording. Two of my sons happen to be at the moment in Costa Rica arranging Hanukkah in a resort town in Costa Rica that doesn't have a permanent Chabad present. So in order to enable the Yidden over there to celebrate Hanukkah, so I just heard a recording of a talk that my son gave in the introduction to lighting the Hanukkah list last night. And he said, I thought it was a good line, he said they tried to stop us from dancing on Simchas Torah, and the Jewish people are still dancing. They tried to stop us from praying on Yom Kippur, and they did not succeed, we're still praying. And they tried to stop us from illuminating and bringing light to the world, adding light, which is what we do on Hanukkah, and they will not succeed. Yidden will continue to illuminate and to increase in light, and very, very speedily, with Hashem's help, fill the world with light, and we'll see the Ur Chadash Al Tzion Toyer, the great light of the Geulah Shleima through Mashiach, which Chanukah is very strongly connected with Mashiach. Chanukah is not connected with the number 8. The Gemara says that the kinnur in the Beis Hamikdash had 7 strings, but the kinnur of Mashiach, kinnur is the harp or the lyre, they translate, Lyre, whatever that is. And it's a musical instrument. So the kinnur in the Beis Hamikdash had 7 strings. The kinnur of Mashiach is going to have 8 strings. 7 is the number that is associated with the nature of the world, the order of the world, and 8 is the number that is associated with transcending the order. So in the Beis Hamikdash, the menorah had 7 lights, but the menorah of Hanukkah has 8 lights. 8 days, 8 lights, the idea of transcending the normal order of the world, because we're dealing here with the great infinite light of the Hashem Havaya, which is higher than the entire order of the world. That's why the word kinnur has the letters Chavav, right? The first letter and the third letter are Chavav, which makes it 26, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And between that, you have the second and fourth letters are Neir, Nun Reish. So it's the Neir Havaya. As the pasuk says in Shmuel, Ki ata Neiri Havaya, you Havaya, you are my lamp, my light. Vahavaya Yagiach Chashki. And Havaya will illuminate my darkness, turn my darkness into light. Not only be able to shine a light, but transform the darkness itself into light. Just a thought that crossed my mind is that we discussed this once at length. Dinah, a few weeks ago, we read about Dinah going out in Shechem. There's a sikha from the Rabbi where the Rabbi talks about what was Dinah trying to achieve. Dinah went, what did she go for? What was she trying to achieve? And the answer is obvious. Dinah was the daughter of Yaakov and Leah, and what she came to a new city, and she knew that in this city there are idol worshippers. So she went to speak to the girls of the land to introduce them to monotheism, speak to them about serving Hashem. Now, unfortunately, things didn't work out exactly as she had intended them to work out. But if you ask yourself in the big picture, was Dinah successful? So it's interesting. After the whole Parsha with Shem, which was a very, very painful and very unpleasant Parsha, Shimon and Levi came in, and they sorted out the men of Shem as they deserved. And what happened to the women of Shem? So the pasuk says that the women and the children of Shem, they were taken captive. Bnei Yaakov took them captive. So what happened to them? They became obviously maidservants in the homes of the sons of Yaakov. Now we know that a maidservant in a Jewish home has to take on to serve one God. So in the long run, not according to the script that she had written out for herself, but in the long run, she was much more effective than she could have ever dreamt. All the women of Shem became servants of Hashem. So I was thinking along the lines that the purpose of the Hanukkah celebrations and the giant menorahs and everything is to bring the message of Hanukkah, presuming Nisa, to bring the message of Hanukkah to the world. This event Nobody scripted it this way. Nobody intended it to be this way. But L'Poel, this event brought the message of Hanukkah and the awareness of Hanukkah to the entire world. The entire world. Very steep price. And the Eibishter should, as I said, comfort us and mend the broken hearts. And we should see the darkness transformed into bright light without any ifs, buts, and whens.
Can I ask you, I don't know if you can see it, they've actually found in which could be Zion, actual coins that the Hanukkah through. It's not some fable we give if they found the coins. So they now know what we know.
I'm sorry, you haven't made a big dent.
I'm going to ask no, but the outside world, look, it's true.
Okay. I think it's part of basic history. What's his name? The historian at that time, Josephus. I don't think nobody contests that. But I hear you. Yeah, say it. I guess it's a good thing. So definitely an union of Pirsum Nisa, not the way we intended it. There's essentially three miracles that we celebrate on Hanukkah. The first miracle we speak about in Al Nisim. Al Nisim, we speak about the fact that the Jewish people were being persecuted and were not being allowed to serve Hashem. They were being forced to give up Torah and mitzvahs, and the Chashmonaim stood firm and went with Mesilas Nefesh to fight them and to and had they have done a risk assessment before they started this revolt, I don't think anyone would have said that according to that it's likely that they will be victorious. But they didn't make any risk assessments. They didn't make any cheshbonos. They went with Mesilas Nefesh for the sake of protecting Torah and mitzvahs, which is the lifeline of the Jewish people. And the Almighty made an incredible miracle for us. As we say in Val Nisim, Masarta Giborim Biyat Chalosh, and you handed over the mighty in the hands of the weak, Rabim Biyat Ma'atim, the many in the hands of the few, Rishoim Biyat Tzadikim, the wicked in the hands of the righteous, Tmeim Biyat Tahirim, the impure in the hands of the pure, Bezeidim Biyat Neis Kesevasecha, and the sinners in the hands of those who engage in Torah. So the miracle of the winning of the war was an incredible miracle. And that was the miracle that enabled all the settings for all the other miracles to exist. Right? Had they not have won the war, they could not have taken charge of the Beis Hamikdash, and then there wouldn't have been anything to discuss about lighting the menorah, pure oil, not pure oil. The whole thing wouldn't have come into it. The first miracle was that they won the war, which is an incredible miracle in its own right. The second miracle was after they won the war, they came into the Beis Hamikdash. They cleaned out the Beis Hamikdash to the best of their ability, and they wanted to go and light the menorah. Problem is that the Greeks, very strange behavior. Normally, when an army comes into another land, they conquer, especially the holiest shrine, they'll do one of two things. Either they'll destroy it, like the Babylonians before them and the Romans after them, or they'll plunder it, take away everything precious. And if for some reason they were fascinated by oil, they would have plundered the oil, they would have taken away the oil. What did the Greeks do? Very strange. They didn't take away anything, didn't take away any oil. They opened up every jug of oil, made a point, searching through the whole Beis Hamikdash to find every jug of oil and touching it, tummy. Close it back. You can keep it as long as it's tummy. It's interesting that this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to make all the oil tummy. So obviously they went out of their way to find every single last jug of oil and make it tummy. Nevertheless, when the Chashmonaim entered into the Beis Hamikdash, they wanted to light the menorah. Miraculously, there was one jug of oil that still had the seal of the Kohen Gadol and remained Torah. Despite the fact that the Yevanim did everything in their ability to be able to find every single jug of oil and defile it, there was one jug of oil that survived. That evaded them somehow or other that we don't understand. That was an incredible miracle in its own right.
Isn't it possible like 200 years before?
I don't know. Let's keep to the simple story as it's told over in the Gemara. But one pach they found. Yeah. Then the third miracle is that this jug only had enough oil to last for 1 day. And miracle of miracles, it lasted for 8 days until they were able to procure new pure oil. So 3 miracles. First miracle is they won the war. Second miracle is they found the oil. And the third miracle is that the oil that was only enough to last for 1 day lasted for 8 days. So if you look at these 3 miracles, let's first try and put them into place on the timeline. When did these 3 miracles occur? So as far as the winning of the war is concerned, there are actually a number of opinions in the Rishonim. But one of the opinions, which is quoted in Torah, is that Chanukah and Purim have a common denominator, which sets them aside from the biblical festivals. Take, for example, Pesach. Pesach we celebrate on the 15th of Nisan. The plague of the firstborn took place at midnight on the 15th of Nisan. The actual Exodus took place at noon on the 15th of Nisan. So the miracle was on the 15th of Nisan, and that's when we celebrate. Purim, however, is very different. What was the miracle on Purim? The miracle, let's remember, Haman threw lots, and the lots fell on the 13th day of the month of Adar, 12th month of the month of Adar. So he issued a decree that on the 13th of Adar, all the entire Jewish people will be annihilated, killed, massacred in 1 day, men, women, and children on the 13th of Adar. So all the anti-Semites had their marching orders to go and kill every single last Jew on the 13th of Adar. Then when Esther fell before her feet and she cried before Achashverosh and she asked him to annul the decree, and Achashverosh refused to annul the decree, but the maximum he was prepared to do was to send out another decree allowing the Jewish people self-defense, so that the Jewish people on the 13th of Adar could go out and kill those that are coming to kill them. So there was a war, and miracle of miracles, the Jewish people were very victorious in that war, and thousands of anti-Semites were killed, and not one Jew was killed or hurt, which is an incredible miracle. But that day they were busy fighting for their lives. And therefore, the Megillah says, they rested on the 14th. After fighting on the 13th, they rested on the 14th. They made it into a day of feasting and rejoicing. And Al Kain, therefore, the Chachamim instituted for the future years that the Yidden who live in the unwalled cities should celebrate every year on the 14th of Adar. What happened on the 14th of Adar? Nothing happened on the 14th of Adar. The miracle happened on the 13th of Adar. But they rested on the 14th, and therefore we celebrate on the 14th. Chanukah is suggested, the Meiri holds like that, and other Rishonim hold like that, and it's quoted in quite a few of the Achronim, that Chanukah is called Chanukah because of Chanucha Pei. They rested on the 25th, meaning the war was over. That's when they were able to breathe and calmly enjoy their newfound liberty was on the 25th. Which implies that they won the war on the 24th. And on the 25th, they rested from the war. So if that's the case, when did the miracle of Masarta Geberim B'yad Chalashim, Rabbi B'yad Ma'atim, Utmeim B'yad Tehedim, Rishayim B'yad Tzadikim, B'zeidim B'yad Eskes Erasecha? You delivered the many in the hands of the few and the strong in the hands of the weak. When did that miracle take place? On the 24th of Kislev. Then they entered the Beis HaMikdash. And they wanted to light the menorah, and they looked for oil, and they found 1 jug of oil. When did they find this 1 jug of oil? So it appears on the 25th. 25th of Kislev is when they found the 1 jug of oil. Now they had enough to last for 1 day. So for the 25th, they were good. Problem is they wanted it to last for more than 1 day. So this miracle that Hashem made for us, that the oil that only was enough to last for 1 day, lasted for 8 days. The first day that they benefited from this miracle is the 26th. So these 3 miracles, winning the war, finding the jug, and the jug lasted for 8 days rather than for 1 day, are associated with the numbers 20, or the dates 24th, 25th, and 26th. Now, if you hold on to that for a moment, we'll go on to a slightly different journey, and we'll see how the two come together. In Tanya, we learn, in the second section of Tanya, we learn about the concept of the oneness of Hashem. Hashem is one and only, and there's nothing else besides him. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad is the mitzvah of Achdus Hashem. Right? There's a mitzvah of Hamonas Holocaust to believe in Hashem, Tzorech Hashem Elokeinu, and there's a mitzvah of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad to believe in Hashem's Achdus, His unity, His uniqueness. That there's only Hashem and nothing else. As the pasuk says, Yadata Hayoim Vashivesa Alavecha, you shall know this day and take the heart. The Hashem Hu Elikim, the Almighty is God. Vashamayim Imal, in heaven above, Al Aretz Mitachas, on earth below. Ain't Oid, there is none else. Now, what exactly does it mean there is none else? So, really, there are two levels at which this could be understood. There is the way it appears from above to below, and there's the way it appears from below to above. This is described in the Zohar as Yechuda Ilah and Yechuda Tatah, the higher unity and the lower unity. And just to make it clear, I mentioned this probably a number of times in the past, that we talk about the world as being created something from nothing. Something from nothing. Now, what's the something? The world. And what's the nothing? Where the world comes from. Right? Where does the world come from? Created by Hashem. So what are we saying? If the world is something from nothing, we're something, and Hashem is nothing? Sounds like a bit of a chutzpah. But, on the other hand, we can only use words that we can relate to. So from our perspective, something is either something that I can grasp, touch, see, or if it's an intellectual or emotional concept, I have to at least be able to perceive it, relate to it, right? It has to have some definition. Something which is beyond grasp, beyond touch, beyond conceptualization. It has no definition. It's beyond definition. In my world, is a non-existence. I define existence by what I can grasp. If it's ingraspable, as far as I'm concerned, it's not. Since Hashem is infinite, no limitation. But no limitation means he's beyond definition, because a definition automatically limits something. If it's this, it's not something else. So from our perspective, what we call something that we can relate to by touching it or seeing it or grasping it, and Hashem is beyond that. So we call him nothing. So we call creation something from nothing. But the real truth is the other way around. The real truth is that Hashem is the only real something. Because he is infinite. He is an absolute existence. He's a definite existence. And the world is something that he created. And he recreates every second, and it only exists because his creative energy recreates it every second. And we learn in Tanya that therefore the world isn't really an independent existence at all. It's only his power of creation that's recreating it. And if you want to take it a step further, his power of creation is called his speech. Right? Hashem created the world with speech. And when we speak, the words that we speak go out of us. But when Hashem speaks, there's no such thing as out of him because he's everywhere. So the power of creation is also within him. So the world essentially is only the power of creation of Hashem. And that is also not separated from him. So there isn't anything other than Hashem. But it's hard for us to relate to that. So the declaration that we make, that Hashem is one and only, and there's nothing else besides him, we actually make that declaration with our eyes closed. We say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem is one and only, there's nothing else except. That's the way things are from the perspective of from above to below. That's called Yechuda Ilah, the supernal unity. It's unity the way it's perceived from above to below. But then we open our eyes and we see, hang 1 minute, see a few things around him. What does it mean Hashem is one and only, there's nothing else except him? So then we have to understand that we can also relate to this on a lower level. That is, Hashem is the only real, powerful, all existence, and all other existence is completely nullified, completely subservient to him. That's from our perspective. That's called Yechuda Tatah, the lower unit. And that we express by saying the words Baruch Shem Kvod Malchusay Li'olam Vod. After we open our eyes, we say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchusay Li'olam Vod, which means there is a world, but the world is completely nullified before Hashem, completely subservient before Hashem. And we express that with the word Voed, which is pointed out in the Zohar to be the same letters as the word Echad, just with a small change. And I'll explain how. A little bit of grammar over here, I think we can handle. There's various grammatical rules in the Holy Tongue. We know that there are certain letters in the Torah, in the Lashon Kodesh, that can be written with a dot or without a dot, and they're pronounced differently, right? A beis and a vase, a kaf and a chaf, a pei and a fei, a taf and a saf, right? How do you know when you put in a dot and you make it a hard letter, or when you leave out the dot and make it a soft one? What's the rule? So one of the rules is that after the letters Aleph, Hey, Vav, and Yud, if they're followed by a beis or a kaf or a pei or a taf, then it's going to be without a dot. After a hard consonant, it'll be with a dot. That's the way it usually works. So the letters Aleph, Hey, Vav, Yud fit into one rule, fit into one klal. Letters that fit into one klal are interchangeable with each other. So the Aleph of Echad becomes the Vav of Vaed. Bring it down a notch, becomes the Vav of Vaed. Now we have another rule. We know there's 22 letters in the Aleph base, and they fit into 5 categories based on the 5 articulative tools of the mouth. Right? There's the teeth, the tongue, the lips, the palate, and the throat. They're called the 5 moitzois hapeh. And each letter comes from one of those articulative tools. There's a group of letters that come from the palate, there's a group of letters that come from the tongue, a group of letters that come from the teeth, a group of letters that come from the lips, and a group of letters that come from the throat. And those letters that fit into the same group are interchangeable. Rashi in Chumash even says on the pasuk Rachil be'amecha, which is the word rechilus, comes from the word rachil, right? So Rashi explains that what's the word rachil mean? It's the same word as meragel, a spy. Somebody goes around and spies to check out what's happening in other people's homes and goes around and yaps around in the street. Yeah, that's called rechilus. So that the chaf is interchanged, it changes with a gimel, because they both come from the same articulative tool. So we know that the letters Aleph, Ches, Hey, and Ayin come from the throat. They're the guttural letters. Therefore, they're interchangeable. So the Ches of Echad becomes the Ayin of Vaed. The mega Daled, the jumbo Daled of Echad, if you look at the Sefer Torah or Tefillin or Mezuzah, Echad is written with a big Daled, Daled Rabas, is changed for the regular Daled of Vaed. So each one of the letters of Echad is brought down one notch to make the word Vaed. So basically, Echad is understanding the concept of the oneness of Hashem in its full, powerful, absolute sense. There's only Hashem and nothing else. And Vaed takes it down a level lower. Hashem is there, and everything else is subservient. Okay. Now, let's go back for a moment to the miracles. So the first miracle was that they won the war. The many fell in the hands of the few, the mighty in the hands of the weak, etc. So which level of Achdus Hashem, unity of Hashem, does that express? Does that express the level that it's only Hashem and nothing else? Or does that express that everything else is subservient to Hashem, and Hashem's energy is ultimately victorious over everything else, and everything else is subservient to the power of Kedusha? Which one would you think that this miracle, that there was a war, and there was a war, and it was a difficult war, a war they paid a heavy price for, and at the same time there was a miracle that they won the war, and the mighty Greek army became subservient or had to run away from the small group of Chashmonaim who were fighting them. So since no one's answering, I'll take a shot at it. I would think that it is the lower level, because if it would have been the higher level, the Greeks would have just disappeared. They would have gone up in smoke. The fact that they were there and they were fighting, and you needed a miracle to make them be delivered in the hands of the righteous, in the hands of the pure, in the hands of the few, in the hands of the weak, means that it demonstrated the subservience of that which is ungodly to the godly. So that's Yehuda Tata, that's the lower unity. Yeah, everybody's with me still? Now, let's look at the words Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchusei Le'olam Va'ed, which is the declaration that we make, declaring the lower unity. And we count the letters. Baruch, Beis, Reish, Vav, Chaf, is 4. Shem, Shin, Mem, another 2, makes 6. Kvoid, Kaf Veis Vav Daled is another 4, makes 10. Malchusay, Mem Lamed Chaf Vav Sof Vav, another 6, 16. Ule Ohilam, Lamed Ayin Vav Lamed Mem is another 5, makes 21. Va'ed, Vav Ayin Daled, 24. So Baruch Shem Kved Malchusay Leilam Va'ed is connected with the number 24. And the miracle, which was a demonstration of the lower unity, that everything which is ungodly becomes subservient to godliness, that happened on the 24th of Kislev. Now let's move on to the next miracle. Next miracle is the Greeks tried to defile all the oil in the temple. And they made an effort, and they were successful in the vast majority of cases, right? Nearly in every case. But there was one jug of oil that somehow, this was the jug of oil that was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, and somehow or other it evaded the Greeks. In other words, from the perspective of this jug of oil, the Greeks could not have any effect on it. The Greeks didn't exist as far as this jug of oil was concerned. In other words, this was a manifestation of that aspect of godliness which transcends the battle completely. At this level, there's no battle, there's no Greeks. There's just pure oil, which represents godliness. This is the level of Yehuda Ilah, the higher unity. So in the second miracle, that they found this jug of oil that was not defiled by the Greeks just miraculously, it just evaded them. This is the manifestation of the Yehuda Ilah, of the higher unity. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And when did this miracle happen? He said, on the 25th of Kislev. So let's take the words Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad and count the letters. So Shema is Shin Mem Ayin is 3. Yisrael was Yud Sin Reish Aleph Lamed is another 5. That makes 8. Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei is another 4. Makes 12. Elokeinu Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Nun Vav is another 6. That makes 18. Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei is another 4. It makes 22. Echad Aleph Ches Daled 25. So the second miracle is the expression of Yehuda Ilah, of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which is the 25, and that miracle happened on the 25th of Kislev. Now there's a third miracle. Third miracle is that the oil that was only enough to last for 1 day miraculously lasted for 8 days. So ask yourself a question. How is this miracle different from the others? Very simple. The first 2 miracles, in one way or another, were enclosed in the garments of nature. In other words, they won the war. Right? They didn't just, the Greeks didn't disappear. They fought them, and according to the rules of as I said, the risk assessment would have told you that the Greeks are likely to win the war, but it was a miracle, and the small group of Chashmonaim were successful in chasing away the big army of the Greeks. But there was a war, there was a battle. And as a result of the battle, that happened. So there was some connection with the rules of nature. Similarly, the second miracle, that they found the jug of oil that still had the seal of the Kohen Gadol. Again, they didn't say abracadabra and a jug of oil appeared. There was a jug of oil, it was there all along. We don't understand why the Greeks couldn't get hold of it, but that's what happened. And then the Chashmonaim found it. A miracle. But the miracle was enclosed in the rules of nature. However, the third miracle, that there was only enough oil to last for 1 day and miraculously it lasted for 8 days, that has no hold in the rules of nature whatsoever. A jug of oil that only has enough oil to last for 1 day can only last for 1 day. It's an absolute miracle with no foothold in nature whatsoever that makes a jug of oil that lasts for 1 day last for 8 days. So that third miracle transcends nature completely. Now we know that the name of God that is connected with nature is Elokim. Elokim is Mimatri Hatev. The name of God that transcends nature completely is Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei is numerical value 26. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, and Hey is 5. Together makes 26. Now, even though you'll argue that the other miracles were also miracles, they're also connected with Yud Kei Vav Kei. And we said, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We have the name Yud Kei Vav Kei there. But nevertheless, we know that there is Yud Kei Vav Kei itself. There's 2 levels of Yud Kei Vav Kei. As we know in the 13 attributes of mercy, We say Hashem, Hashem, Ke'el Rachel L'Chanun. And between the first time we say Hashem and the second time we say Hashem, there's a psik. There's a line saying, stop, Hashem, stop, Hashem. And the way it's explained in Kabbalah, you have two levels of Yud Kei Vav Kei. You have Yud Kei Vav Kei, the way it comes down into Ishtalshalos, into the chain of worlds, where the Yud is Chachma, and the Hey is Bina, and the Vav is the six emotional attributes, Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Yesod, and the last Hey is Malchus. Or the Yud is Atzilus, the Hey is Bria, the Vav is Yitzira, and the Hey Achrena is Asiya. Again, you're talking here on the level of the chain of worlds. And then you have the Shem HaEtzem, the name that describes the essence of Hashem that transcends Ishtalshalos totally. That's called Havaya de La'ela, the higher name of Havaya. And that represents the very essence that totally transcends any connection with the world. And that was manifest in the third miracle, which was that the oil that only could last one day miraculously lasted 8 days. And that is connected with the number 26 that was first benefited from on the 26th of Kislev. And this, as we said before, is the revelation of the number 8, which is, again, transcending Ishtalshalos completely. 7 is the number of Ishtalshalos, and 8 transcends Ishtalshalos completely. And when that miracle happened, then they came to realize that the first 2 miracles were also associated with this higher level, although they were enclosed in some packaging of nature. But ultimately, when the third miracle happened, they realized what the true essence of the first 2 miracles was. And as I pointed out before, the connection of Mashiach to Chanukah with the number 8, and also I think I mentioned before that if you look on the dreidel, you'll see the letters Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin. Nun is 50, Gimel is 3, Hey is 5, and Shin is 300. Together that makes 358, which, surprise, surprise, is the same gematria as Mashiach. Mem, Shin, Yud, Ches is 358.
And why don't we celebrate on the 26th? Because I think the higher.
Okay, so the question was, so if that's the case, why don't we have a special celebration on the 26th? Yeah. So, in other words, we do celebrate Hanukkah on the 26th. We light 2 candles, and we say Hallel, and we make latke parties, and we do everything, the same thing that we do on the 27th, 28th, 29th, etc. Right? So your question is not why we don't celebrate 26th, but why isn't there an additional celebration on the 26th? So this is a very good question, and there's a number of layers of answers to this question. One layer of the answer I already gave before, that once the miracle of the 26th happened, it became clear that the miracle of the 24th and the 25th were lead-ups to this miracle, also part of this higher madreg. So we have the whole Hanukkah we celebrate in this higher madreg. That's one answer. Another answer is, it says in the Gemara, L'shana acheres kavum b'halul v'heidah, that the year after, Chachamim established these 8 days should be dedicated to praise and thank Hashem, made a Yom Tov. So the question is asked, why did they wait till the next year? Right after the miracle, the Chachamim should have got together and they should have said, next year on the 25th of Kislev, we'll make a Yom Tov. L'shana acheres kavum. Next year they fixed it as a day. Why? So one of the answers is that when we Yidden celebrate a Yom Tov, it's not just a commemoration of a historical event. We celebrate Pesach because 3,300 some odd years ago, Hashem made a miracle for us. We came out of Mitzrayim. No, we celebrate Pesach because every year on Pesach there's the same revelation that took place in Mitzrayim 3,300 some odd years ago repeats itself every year on this night, and that's why we commemorate it and celebrate it in this way. So in the miracle of Chanukah, and the same thing, Shavuos is Matan Torah, and all the revelations, and the words of the pasuk says in the Megillah, the Hayamim Ha'ela Niskarim V'Nasim. These days are commemorated and reenacted. So the Arizal points out that as a result of Yidden commemorating these events and the way that the Torah tells us how to celebrate a Yom Tov, we cause it to be reenacted. We cause that revelation of godliness that manifested itself the first time to reoccur. And we're celebrating, as we say, it's not our forefathers alone that Hashem redeemed from Egypt. We were redeemed with them. So but when we celebrate Chanukah, it's by Yomim Ahim Bizman Hazeh. So when it came the next year, Chachamim wanted to see if the Eir is going to come back again on the 25th of Kislev. If the Eir doesn't come back again, what's the point of celebrating a Yom Tov if nothing's happening? And that was a nice thing. It happened once upon a time. Right? But when the Chachamim saw on the 25th of Kislev that light came again, they said, "Oh, now it's going to recur every year. We're going to make it into a Yom Tov every year." Now, what happened on the 26th of Kislev? On the 26th of Kislev, there was a continuation of the light that was already shining on the 25th. There wasn't anything unique differentiating the 26th from the 25th. So therefore, they didn't enact any unique celebration on the 26th, because this Madrega that was revealed on the 26th is the Madrega of Mashiach. And until Mashiach comes, we can't fully absorb that. That's two levels in the answer.
It came back on the 26th. What light came back?
So there's different explanations on this. I can't learn Kol HaTorah Kula Regel Achas, but we have in Chanukah we have access to incredible inspiration, incredible energy. I told the story a number of times. I think I spoke in a seminary this week. I summed it up with the following story. I think I've told it here before. There was once a group of college students that came to the Rebbe in the 1960s, and they had a lot of questions. And they came to ask the Rebbe their questions. So the first question that one of them asked was, "We heard that the Lubavitcher Rebbe performs miracles. We want to know if it's true." Yeah, it's a good question to stump the rabbi, I think. Yeah. So the Rebbe said to them that every Jew has a neshama which is divine, and if you can reveal that divine energy within yourself, then every Jew has the power to transcend the natural and connect with the miraculous. And then they asked other questions. They got on the topic of discussion shifted, and many interesting things were discussed. As they were about to conclude, the Rebbe said to them, "I think in the beginning of our conversation, you asked me a question about miracles. So I'm thinking it might be a good idea, as we're here together, I'd like to perform a miracle together with you right here and right now." Sounds exciting. So what's nature and what's a miracle? Nature, in Avodas Hashem, means a person serves Hashem according to their comfort zone, according to their nature, according to what works for them. A miracle is when you transcend nature. You go above and beyond. You do a lot more than you're comfortable with, more than is your nature, right? So the Rebbe said, I want everybody to stop for a moment and think. What is the level of Yiddishkeit that they're comfortable with? Then it's natural to them. They can handle it. And think about what you can do to go one notch above that. Perform a miracle. And make that resolution right now, and that will be the miracle that we'll all experience today. So when we sit by the candles, and we look at the candles, and we see them, and the number growing each day, and we know that they're one of 8. We know that they have this incredible power in them to transform darkness into light, and the miraculous. So what is the strength and the inspiration that we get from it? Right? In Yiddish, there's an expression, "Was der Lichterlach det zählt." What do they tell us? Is Lichterlach. They empower us. They empower us to be able to reach the miraculous within ourselves. That's the bottom line. Bottom line is to understand the power that there is in the Hanukkah lights, and to be able to take that into ourselves, and to not keep it for ourselves only, also to share it with people around us. And that's one of the reasons why we look to be Pirsumei Nisa, to make the Hanukkah experience as public as possible. Every Jew that interacts with the lights of Hanukkah gets that very, very special divine energy from the lights of Hanukkah, which empowers him to be able to find the miraculous within himself, herself, and be able to take on and bring out the neshama and the miraculous powers of the neshama within themselves and their service of Hashem, and to stand up to various challenges in life. So it's a very powerful thing, Hanukkah. See that all the answers are not going to. I'll make a suggestion. How about if we learn a little bit of Tanya, and after the lesson I'll give you a few minutes. Okay, that's even better. Okay, so we are towards the end of Perek Gimel. It's page 14 on the numbers on top of the page, and page 12 on the numbers on the bottom. We talked about this orally towards the end of the last year, And which reminds me that I should apologize for canceling last week's shiur, and also need to clarify what our position is on the next 2 weeks, because I don't know, when the shiur was originally started many years ago, Mrs. Safran will tell you, and Mrs. Gorman will tell you that Mrs. Ruttman and Mrs. Feller. Anyway, so both of the women that attended the shiur were women that had children of school age. So when it came school holiday, the shiur went on holiday. But I don't think that is necessarily the case at the moment. The husbands do all the work now, yeah. Anyway, so I'm just wondering how people feel about whether the shiur should continue through the next 2 weeks or not. If there's any input, I'll. I asked Mrs. Himes what she thought, and she said she really doesn't know, and she's not able to be here today to ask the question, so I'm asking it on her behalf. I know everybody's very shy over here, but if somebody. Okay, who thinks we should continue the shiur through the next 2 weeks? Looks like we already have a majority. Okay, so I'm not going on holiday as far as I know. Yeah, you're okay with it? Okay, so Be'ezus Hashem, we're have the shiur. Yeah, Be'ezus Hashem. Okay, so we were discussing at the end of the last shiur that we have 3 intellectual faculties: Chachma, Bina, and Das. And we said that the intellectual faculties of Chachma, Bina, and Das, they are the parents, and the emotions are the offspring. Why are they called the parents? The emotions called the offspring? Because the way you bring yourself to experience emotion is by understanding, in this case, the greatness of Hashem, and contemplating on it, and connecting with it, and that results in emotion. That results in excitement and enthusiasm and a passion. The more you understand the greatness of Hashem, the more passionate you'll become about serving Him. The more passionate you'll become about studying His Torah, which He is enclosed. The more passionate you'll be about helping a Jew who has a neshama, which is a chelak alakami ma'al mamash. So the Chachma, Bina, and Das, they are the parents that bring about the emotions, which are the offspring. Now, we explained it in the first part of the chapter. We explained Chachma and Bina. We said that Chachma is the insight, and which comes in a form of a very concentrated spark, and that illuminates in a general way, and then Bina is bringing it into detail, creating into a structure. We discussed in a previous shiur at length what it means that the structure has depth and width and length, and the word Bina is from the word binyan. A building is not just a point. A building is a whole structure. It has length, width, and depth. So you take the insight that it was in Chachma, Koyach Ma, and you develop it into a whole structure, a structured understanding. But then there's a third component. The third component is Das. What's the third component, and why is that so significant in making a difference? So I explained that you can be brilliant, you can understand it all. But if it's all academic, and it's all removed from your own experience, then it's a philosophy. You can get a good mark on the test, but it's not going to change you. In order for it to change you, you have to internalize it. It has to become you. It has to become something that belongs to you, that's part of your experience. I gave an analogy, I think I mentioned it in the previous shiur, about a town where everybody was illiterate. And because everybody was illiterate, with one exception, the town Melamed, he knew how to read because he had to teach reading. So when someone would get a letter in the post, this town, which didn't happen very often, they would take it to the town Melamed to read it to them. So one time a gentleman in the town got a letter, and he couldn't make an heads and tails out of it because he couldn't read. He went to the Melamed, and he asked the Melamed to read it to him. So the Melamed opened up the letter, and he looks at it, and he says, "Dear so-and-so, I'm really sorry to share this news with you, but unfortunately, I have to tell you that your father passed away." So this villager collapsed. He fainted. So the question was, who had the information first? The Melamed had the information first. So why didn't the Melamed faint? Right? If information causes reaction, then the Melamed should have fainted first, or he should have fainted. Why didn't he faint? The answer is simple. It wasn't his father. Exactly. So it's 2 things. You need the information, and it has to become yours. It has to become your father. So you can do a philosophy test on knowing the greatness of Hashem. But if it's not your father, it's not going to have the desired effect. Therefore, in addition to Chachma and Bina, you need a third component, which is Das. Das means connection. To connect with it at the point where it becomes, you take ownership of it, it becomes yours, it becomes synonymous with you. And then, if Hashem's greatness is meaningful to me, then it will inspire me. If Hashem's awesomeness is meaningful to me, then it will overawe me, and I'll have the results of being overawed and the state of reverence of Hashem. So this is what the Alter Rebbe now continues. We'll read this inside. The hadas umiloshen v'ha'adam yada eschab. The word das is used in the Chumash. The adam yada eschab doesn't mean adam nu chaba. It means he connected with chaba. V'loshen is kashrus v'eschabros. It's an expression of binding and connecting. And this context of intellectual exercise, what it means is shemekasher daitay, that he connects his mind. The kasher amitz v'chazak, with a firm and strong connection, very, very firm and very strong. The yiska machshavtei b'chazak, and plugs in his thought strongly. The gedula sein sabar, in the greatness of the infinite one, blessed be he. The einay masiach daitay, and he does not remove his mind from it. So there's two aspects here. There's the intensity of that connection, and there is the lasting, long-lasting. It's connecting intensely and also staying the course, contemplating for a substantial amount of time. Was even if someone is wise and understanding in the greatness of the infinite one, blessed be, and he's brilliant and he's able to give a lecture that will fascinate everybody. But he's not going to connect his mind. And plug in his thought strongly, intensely, and diligently, continue in a continuous manner. So he might experience something that he thinks is reverence and love. But it's not going to be real, it's not going to be true, it's not going to be the real thing. It's going to be illusionary, imaginary. He thinks he's loving, he thinks he's fearing, but it's not really permeating him, it's not really transforming him. And as we learned in the very beginning, when we learned this, the title page of Tanya, the name of the exercise over here is that it should become real, it should become who we are. Therefore, hadas ukiyum hamidus b'chiyusam. Therefore, das is what keeps the emotions, what makes them really, really last, and gives a life, it vivifies them, it gives a liveliness to them. This is the reason why das, as opposed to Chachma and Bina, includes both chesed, which leads to love of Hashem, and gvura, which leads to fear of Hashem, or reverence for Hashem. Pirish Avav Anfer, means the love of Hashem and all its branches, V'yirav Anfer, and the fear of Hashem with all its branches. In other words, in Das itself, there's a bit of a split between Das leading towards Ava, towards Chesed and Ava, and Das leading towards Gvura and Yira. Although Chachma and Bina you can understand things in a way that leads you to appreciate how great it is, how incredible it is, how beautiful it is. And you can understand things that lead to understanding how awesome they are. But since in Chachma Bina it's all on the rational academic side of the experience, over there it doesn't really make such a big difference where it's leading to. It's a beautiful academic experience, whether it's leading you in the direction of Ava or it's leading in the direction of Yira, that's not what you're experiencing now. Now you're doing the philosophy, you're doing the academic part. But when it comes to Das, Das is the part of the experience that is leading you in the direction of emotion. So here it's very pronounced whether it's Das that's leading towards Ava or it's Das that's leading towards Yira. And this is the reason why we often have the expression that there's 4 brain compartments. Although we know there's Chachma, Bina, and Das, only 3. But sometimes we speak of 4. In fact, in Tefillin, there's 4 portions and 4 boxes. In the Shorash, there's 4 separate boxes. In the Shoyah, there's all 4 patches rolled up into one. Parsha goes into one box, but there's 4, and that corresponds to the 4 brain compartments: Chachma, Bina, and Das, that is Nechlak leChesed u'Gvura, that is divided into Chesed, Das towards Chesed, and Das towards Gevurah. And this is actually the 4 portions of that are in the film. First one is Kadesh Lichol B'Feir. Kodesh is often associated with Chachma. Kadosh Michal B'Chayr it corresponds to Chachma. V'hoya ki v'yacha is Bina. Shema ve'ahavta is Shema means listen, concentrate. That's Das leaning towards Ava, towards Chesed and Ava. And v'hoyim Shameya Yishamru Lachem is Das leaning towards Gvura and Yireh. You have all the four Meichim because Das is Nechlak Chesed and Gvura. This is a very fundamental principle that in order for the Chachma and the Bina to have the proper effect on one's emotions, there needs to be also bringing into the picture Das. And there's an interesting Hasidic vertel on the pasuk in Parshas Vayetze. It says, "Vayar Hashem kisnua Leah." Hashem saw that Leah is less loved. Yiftach es rachma, and he opened her womb. He caused her to become fertile and fruitful. The Rachel Akara, Rachel was barren. So it's brought in Chassidus in general, in Kabbalah, that Rachel and Leah represent the two Heys of Hashem's name. It says, Shem Hagdoila Leah, the Shem Haktana Rachel. According to Kabbalah, Shem Hey Gedoila Leah, the higher Hey of Hashem's name is Leah, and the lower Hey of Hashem's name, Hey Ktana, is Rachel. So we know that the higher Hey represents Machshav, thought, Bina, Machshav. The second Hey represents Dibur, speech. So Vayar Hashem Kisnu Alei, Hashem saw that people don't like to think. People don't like to think. Well, no one's time to think. Yiftach es rachma, he made it very productive. Thinking, concentrating, contemplating is an extremely productive exercise. You contemplate on something, it will affect you, it will inspire you. The Rachel, speaking, is akara, it's barren. You can talk from today till tomorrow, and it won't necessarily make any difference in the person who's speaking himself. He knows it all. And he can give a great speech. But if he hasn't stopped to actually think it through, it's not going to make that much of a difference to his own emotional state. I once heard somebody say, somebody was rushing around from one shiur to another, and on the way he put on earphones and listened to a shiur. So he asked him, I want to ask you a question. When do you think? When do you think? In order for everything to be absorbed, once in a while you have to stop and think a little bit. So that's Das. Das is concentration, contemplation, letting it sink in to the point that it becomes who I am. That's connection. Skashrus v'yischabus. Yes.
She was a girl because she got it.
I'm saying that it's not the pshat in the pasuk. It's a vertical. Leah represents machshav. The Rachel represents dibur. Right? To give birth means to produce. Right? So thought is a beautiful idea, but it also has a special gift that it's productive. If you take the things that you learned, things that you read, and you spend time thinking about them, it becomes productive. It causes emotions to develop. If it's only speech, you can talk about it, but you never stop to think it through. You never stop to concentrate on it, contemplate on it. Then it can sometimes be akara. It could be barren in the sense that it doesn't produce the results in the heart. Right? That clear? Should be a freilich and Chanukah for everyone. And the most important thing, Chanukah, as we said before, is an incredible Yom Tov, incredible powers in it. And we shouldn't be selfish. We should also share it with others. As any Yidden that you're able to come in contact with it, you can inspire them. The beauty of having a connection with this Yom Tov lighting, see there's light of a menorah in their home, bring people to a public lighting, whatever it is, it's a tremendous thing. And a special credit to Chabad of Golders Green, Rabbi and Mrs. Simon, who diligently work on having the public menorah lighting at Golders Green Station every single night. And I understand that Sunday, Mir Hashem, will be a mega event, kids' night, and 6 o'clock on Sunday evening at Golders Green Station, with a lot of security. And the main security is Hashem Shemrecha, Shem Tzilcha Yad Yaminecha, and just the intention to do everything possible to make it the greatest success should be sufficient to bring the Geula Shlema, and we should celebrate the rest of Chanukah in Yerushalayim and Beis Hamikdash HaShlishi. Yes.
No, it's just in every time.
Baruch Hashem, that's incredible. A Bible is going to be put up in golden